Chapter 338, Mutant Fruits. After they cleared out the zombies outside, Chin Luzi checked his map and said, "Captain, there are some scattered zombies inside, but most of them are trapped inside the rooms." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Clear out the scattered zombies and find a clean room to stay." The members nodded and entered the building. This time, they used their airguns instead of their abilities.
Pop, pop, pop. Crack, crack, crack.
The sound of skulls being broken echoed in the silent building. Since there was no electricity, they could only use the emergency stairs. Perhaps because many people had tried to escape using the stairs, the number of zombies in the emergency stairwell was greater than those in the lobby. After they killed the zombies, Shen Jinj would burn the corpses. They climbed the stairs until they reached the 20th floor where the presidential suite was located. With Chin Luzi as their GPS and CCTV, they didn't have to worry about being ambushed by zombies. In less than an hour, they had already cleaned up the zombies on the 20th floor and went to check the presidential suites. There were 2 presidential suites on this floor, so they divided the team into 2, each having 1 suite. As for Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai, they went to the honeymoon suite on the same floor. After everyone checked the rooms, Chen Qianfeng prepared water for everyone to take a bath, while Yin Yusheng and Yu Feiyan went to prepare dinner in the kitchen. As everyone was resting, Zhao Lijai brought Jin Zuyan to her space after they locked the suite door. The moment they appeared inside the space, they saw Fu Guari squatting below an apple tree. The moment she saw the scattered apple cores on the ground, Zhao Lijai exclaimed, "Fu Guari, how many apples did you eat?" Hearing her voice, Fu Guari glanced at her for a moment before he continued eating the apples. Zhao Lijai turned to her fiancé and asked, "Brother Yan, didn't he not eat human food?" Jin Zuyan's eyes flashed with surprise for a moment before he shook his head and replied, "I'm not sure either. Maybe he can eat some fruits." Logically speaking, a mutant was similar to zombies, as they would only eat mutant animals or absorb crystal cores. Even though mutant plants also contained some energy, the amount was small. Mutants no longer had taste buds like humans, so they couldn't taste anything and only focused on the energy contained in the things they consumed. If Fu Guari was interested in the mutant apples, then there were only 2 possibilities. Either he had regained his taste buds and was slowly becoming human again, or the energy contained in the mutant apples was similar to mutant animals. From how he behaved, it was more likely that the apples contained high energy value. After the initial heartache, Zhao Lijai noticed that the previous apple seedlings were now already bearing fruits. From the moment she planted the mutant trees in her space until now, it had been less than 3 weeks. Normally, even a grafted dwarf apple tree still needs 2 to 3 years before it starts bearing fruit. Even though she didn't know how long it takes for a mutant fruit tree to mature from a seedling, she was sure that it wouldn't be this fast. She looked at the rows of fruit trees and saw that most of the fruits were already ripe. Using her mind, she harvested all of the ripe fruits and stored 2/3 of the fruits in the warehouse area. As for the rest, she left them for Fu Guari. When she was done, she said, "Brother Yan, let's take a shower first, then we can try out the fruits." Jin Zuyan had no objection to her plan and nodded. "Okay." After the 2 of them entered the house, Fu Guari raised his head, and his silver-colored pupils flickered for a moment before returning to normal. Lowering his head, he continued eating the fruits like a machine. Zhao Lijai washed a bowl of cherries and brought them to the bedroom. When Jin Zuyan came out of the bathroom, he saw his fiancée staring at a cherry. "Aitg, what are you doing?" he asked. "Brother Yan, I feel like this cherry looks bigger than normal mutant fruits," Zhao Lijai replied without taking her gaze off the cherry. Hearing this, Jin Zuyan walked over and sat in front of her. He took the cherry from her hand and said, "It's indeed bigger than the mutant cherry I ate before." After he said this, he ate the cherry and added, "It's more delicious too." Zhao Lijai looked at him for a while before she asked, "Brother Yan, do you feel anything?" Jin Zuyan ate another cherry before he said, "This cherry contains more energy than ordinary mutant fruits. It's better not to take it out." When Zhao Lijai heard this, she was delighted and said, "Then we should keep these fruits for ourselves. But what about our members? After the second reign, they can eat the mutant fruits and mutant animals from outside. There's no need to put yourself in danger just for them," Jin Zuyan replied casually. "Okay." They stayed in the space for an hour before they left. When they reappeared in their honeymoon suite, they heard a knock, followed by Xiaorokai's voice. "Captain, sister-in-law, dinner is ready." Coming, Zhao Lijai replied as she opened the door. The team had dinner together before they returned to their rooms to rest. Tonight, they didn't stay up to guard as they locked the doors and blocked them with furniture. As for the windows, unless a zombie could fly, they wouldn't have to worry about it. While the Phantom team was having a good time, Zun Qi, Gu Sheoz, and a group of soldiers finally reached the base. They rushed back in one day while bringing several trucks of grains. Seeing the base commander return with the supplies, everyone cheered. Although they had to buy the food with points, as long as they worked hard, they wouldn't starve. But if the base had no supplies, no matter how many points they had, they wouldn't be able to buy anything. Therefore, the matter of the base finding so many supplies was worth celebrating for everyone. Early the next morning, the Phantom team woke up before dawn and did some exercises in their rooms before taking a shower and having breakfast together. When the sun rose over the eastern horizon, Jin Zuyin stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the glistening lake in the distance. From the hotel they were staying at, it would take about half an hour to reach the lake. But considering the road conditions and the zombies, it might take 1 or 2 hours to get there. After thinking through the plan for the next few days, he went to find his fiancée. Opening the bedroom door, he saw her packing their backpacks with supplies, medicines, and crystal cores for emergencies. While he knew he would never be separated from her, he didn't refuse her thoughtful intentions. Hearing his footsteps, Zhao Lijai turned and asked, "Brother Yan, are we leaving now?" Jin Zuyin nodded and replied, "They have been waiting for us." Picking up the backpack, he added, "Let's go." When they came out of their room, the members were already waiting for them in the corridor. Today, they went directly to the emergency stairs and didn't bother with the trapped zombies in the rooms or other floors. Zhao Lijai took out their armored vehicles after they walked out of the hotel's entrance. Since they had cleared the surrounding zombies yesterday, there were no scattered zombies spotted nearby. As they drove toward the lake, Qin Luzi checked the map in his mind and said, "Captain, there are several groups of people hiding in this area. 2 of the groups are ability users." Hearing this, Jin Zuyin said, "As long as they don't bother us, just ignore them. Today, our goal is to check the lake and see if we can get some fish." Understood. As their vehicles drove past the buildings, several groups of people watched them. They had noticed the Phantom team's arrival yesterday and initially planned to rob their armored vehicles, but after witnessing them clear out more than 10,000 zombies without casualties, they changed their minds. No one was foolish enough to challenge someone stronger than themselves. Not to mention, this group of people wasn't just strong, their powers were similar to monsters. Due to the road conditions, the Phantom team had to stop to clear abandoned cars blocking the road and fix potholes from past battles. When they finally reached the lake area, 2 hours had passed. Seeing the entrance gate up ahead, Qin Luzi's voice came through the walkie-talkie. "Captain, there are around 300 people in this area. 28 of them are ability users, the rest are ordinary people." Hearing this, Jin Zuyin thought for a moment before replying, "We will see if we can go to the lake. There is no need for unnecessary fighting." After receiving his captain's order, they parked their cars outside the gate. When everyone got out, Zhao Lijai waved her hand and stored the armored vehicles in her space. Not long after, the metal gate opened, and a group of people walked out. Seeing them, Qin Luzi said, "They are the ability users." Nodding, Jin Zuyin walked to the front to meet the group. Standing at the front, a man in his 40s observed them for a while before asking, "Comrade, this place is taken. You should go somewhere else." "Comrade, we didn't plan to take over the place. We only came to visit the lake," Zhang Yuan said with a smile. Raising his eyebrows, the man asked, "Why do you want to visit the lake? In our current situation, it's impossible to believe you came for sightseeing." Noticing the wariness in the man's tone, Jiang Lixin smiled and replied, "My husband and I planned to visit Zhen Lake before, but we never had the chance until the apocalypse. Now that we are here, we want to make up for our regret." Hearing this, the man looked at her and asked with doubt, "You just want to go sightseeing?" Jiang Lixin nodded and said, "Comrade, we won't stay long. After sightseeing, we will leave." "If you feel it's inconvenient, we can pay the entrance fee," she added. The man thought for a while before saying, "It's not impossible for you and your husband to go sightseeing, but the rest of your team can't go in." The moment they heard this, the Phantom team members exchanged glances. Zhao Lijai held onto Jin Zuyin's arm and said, "Brother, my fiancée and I also want to go." The man stared at Jin Zuyin for a long time before saying, "Okay, only 4 people are allowed to enter, and each of you has to pay 5 kilograms of rice or flour as an entrance fee. When he said this, Zhao Lijai hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing with reluctance. Okay. She then took out a bag of flour weighing 20 kilograms. The man glanced at his team, and one of them took the bag of flour. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with it, the man said, "Follow me." Jin Zuyan turned to Zhang Yuan and said, "The rest of you stay here."
Okay.
They understood how strong their captain was, so they weren't worried even if they couldn't enter the lake area. Jin Zuyan, Zhao Lijai, Jiang Lixin, and Chen Ji followed the group and walked into the lake area. As soon as they entered the village, the gate was closed. Turning around, Zhao Lijai noticed 2 people standing on top of the tower not far from the gate. So there were lookouts. No wonder the group came out so soon after they arrived. As they walked, she observed the surroundings. Besides the group of ability users, the rest of the people were ordinary, mostly women and children. They didn't come out but hid in their homes, with a few children peeking from the windows. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai smiled and waved at them. The moment the children saw her waving, they quickly ran away or hid behind the curtains. Looking at the fish being sun-dried in the yard, it seemed that the fish in the lake had not mutated yet. Although she couldn't get saltwater fish, being able to raise freshwater fish in her space was also good. The man led them to the dock near the lake and said, "You can use the boat and go on the lake, but don't go too far." Hearing this, the Phantom team members exchanged glances before Jiang Lixin said, "Thank you for the reminder, comrade." Out of all the boats, they chose a speedboat and left the dock after starting the engine. When the ability users saw them choosing the speedboat, one of them asked, "Boss, is it okay to let them use the speedboat?" The man in his 40s watched the speedboat moving farther away and said coldly, "The fuel is only enough to get them to the middle of the lake. Once they run out of gas, they will just have to wait for death." Hearing his words, another member asked, "Boss, what about those people outside?" "We don't have to worry about them. When the sun sets, those things will take care of them," the man replied. After that, no one asked any more questions and went back to their own tasks. As for Jin Zuyan and the rest, they rowed the boat until the dock was no longer in sight, then turned off the engine. As the boat swayed, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, I feel like those people are up to something." "Don't worry about them. Even if they want to do something, they need the capability to pull it off first," Jin Zuyan replied casually. After saying that, he added, "Aitg, didn't you say you wanted to eat fish? Let's catch some before sunset." "Lijai, did you bring fishing rods with you?" Jiang Lixin asked. "Sister Jiang, there is no need for fishing rods. I can use my ability to catch fish," Zhao Lijai said as she raised her hands. The next moment, the water on the lake fluctuated violently, as if an earthquake had struck. As the waves rose, Jiang Lixin held onto the boat, afraid it might flip. But after a moment, she realized that despite the crashing waves, the boat remained steady, as if it were still on calm water. Noticing her nervousness, Zhao Lijai said, "Sister Jiang, don't worry. With me around, our boat won't flip." After saying that, she raised her hands again, and a massive ball of water surged out from under the lake. As a huge chunk of water was lifted away, a whirlpool formed, sucking in water from the surrounding area to fill the gap. Seeing this, Jiang Lixin and Chen Ji were alarmed and prepared for any danger. But they soon realized a thin water barrier surrounded the boat, protecting them from the lake's chaos. Zhao Lijai stared at the massive water ball and saw countless fish swimming inside. Besides the fish, there were shrimp, crabs, and even oysters. Just thinking about the dishes she could make with those ingredients made her mouth water. With a wave of her hand, she stored the water ball into her space. Using her consciousness, she checked the space and saw the water ball floating above a grassy area. Since she hadn't prepared a pond yet, she decided to keep the fish in the floating ball of water for now. After the first attempt was successful, she no longer held back and used the same method to catch more fish. 2 hours later, the lake's water level had dropped by several centimeters, and its marine life had been reduced by about 10%. Since this lake would become an important food source for several bases in the nearby areas in the future, she didn't take everything. After all, no matter how vast her space was, it was impossible to store an entire lake. Satisfied with her haul, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, let's go back." Jin Zuyan nodded and turned on the speedboat's engine. Just as he turned the boat around, the lake suddenly rippled and large waves crashed against the boat. Fortunately, Zhao Lijai hadn't removed the water barrier, otherwise, the boat would have flipped from the impact. A few minutes later, they saw a massive shadow swimming rapidly toward their direction. The moment she saw it, memories from her past life resurfaced in Zhao Lijai's mind. Her eyes flashed with surprise and delight. If she could catch this big guy, they wouldn't have to worry about running out of seafood for a while. The next moment, a thick, long tentacle shot out from underwater, aiming at their boat. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai raised her hands, and the lake water surged upward, forming a barrier to block the attack. Boom, crash. While water was a liquid, when compressed and shot at high speed, it could become a sharp weapon. The tentacle was struck by the water jet, and the tip was instantly sliced off. Splash! The tentacle retreated into the water at lightning speed. Seeing the huge chunk of octopus tentacle falling into the lake, Zhao Lijai waved her hand and stored it in her space. "Brother Yan, this is our lucky day. We actually encountered a giant octopus," she exclaimed with joy. Seeing how happy his fiancée was, Jin Zuyin gently patted her head and asked with a smile, "Should we catch it alive or roast it first?" Zhao Lijai thought for a moment and said, "Let's catch it alive." "Okay." Standing to the side, Chen Ji and Jiang Lixin were stunned by their casual conversation. They were facing a giant octopus with strong attack power, and these two were chatting like they were buying seafood in the market. Was it because they were too strong, or was the giant octopus just too weak? Not long after, several tentacles shot out from under the water and aimed at them at a fast speed. This time, Zhao Lijai didn't create the water barrier or use the water jet to cut off the tentacles. Instead, she waved her hands and trapped the giant octopus inside a massive ball of water. Splash, splash, splash. Being trapped, the giant octopus felt danger and hit the barrier around it with its tentacles. But no matter how it attacked the barrier, it was unable to free itself. Zhao Lijai felt the barrier was on the verge of breaking due to the attacks. Gritting her teeth, she said, "Collect." Since the giant octopus was a mutant animal and not a zombified animal, it entered her space in the next moment. Splash! After the massive water ball disappeared, another whirlpool appeared on the lake. Seeing this, she created a barrier to stabilize the speedboat. 10 minutes later, the lake finally returned to normal, and there was no sign of any battle in the area. Wiping the sweat on her forehead, Zhao Lijai turned to her fiancé and said, "Brother Yan, let's go back." Jin Zuyin pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket, wiped his fiancé's sweat away before he said, "Okay." Along their way back, Jiang Lixin and Chen Ji were still trying to calm down their nerves. They just witnessed how easily Zhao Lijai defeated the giant octopus. If it were them who had to fight the giant octopus, they might end up as its food instead. Realizing how far their strength differences were, the two of them made up their minds to train harder so they wouldn't become burdens for their team. Not knowing what they were thinking, Zhao Lijai used her consciousness to check the situation in her space. It took her a while to find the giant octopus. When she saw Fu Guari was eating the tentacles that she collected before, she was surprised. It seemed that he was able to eat mutant animals and mutant plants. Since he liked to eat, then she would let him eat. After checking the grassland for a while, she finally decided to raise the fish and giant octopus near the mutant animals area. Using her consciousness, she dug 2 large ponds with a diameter of 50 meters and 20 meters deep each. She piled up the soil on the side as she might need them later. When the ponds were dug, she put the giant octopus in one of the ponds and put the fishes in the other one. Thinking that the giant octopus might need to eat, she put 2 water balls filled with fishes into the same pond as it. Not long after she was done, they reached the dock. After they parked the speedboat, they walked toward the entrance. The moment the group of ability users saw them, their eyes widened in shock. Seeing their reactions, Jin Zuyin and his team knew that these people knew about the giant octopus and deliberately sent them to the lake as a sacrifice. While they were annoyed at these people's despicable behaviors, they didn't show it on their faces. After all, kindness was a luxury in the apocalypse, and this kind of behavior was normal. Seeing them coming back alive, one of the ability users asked, "Comrade, did you not go to the lake?" Hearing this, Zhao Lijai smiled and replied, "We went to the lake, but after a while boating, we didn't see anything interesting. So we return." "How is that possible?" another ability user exclaimed in disbelief. Ignoring their doubts, Jin Zuyin said, "We have done sightseeing and will take our leave now." As soon as he said this, the group of ability users blocked their way and said, "You can't leave." Raising his eyebrows, Jinzuyan let out a chuckle and said, "No one could stop me leaving. If you don't care about your life, you can give it a try." When they heard his arrogant words, they were angered. A young man in his 20s had been feeling annoyed the moment he saw someone as good-looking as this person. So, when he finally had the opportunity to fight him, he didn't hesitate and raised his hand. The next moment, a fireball the size of a watermelon flew toward Jinzuyan at a fast speed. Seeing this, he let out a sneer, raised his hand, and said, "With this trash ability, you still dare to act arrogantly." Boom! When the fireball hit Jinzuyan's hand, it exploded instantly. If it was another person, he would have lost his arm due to the attack, but for him, this was child's play. Seeing that the attack hit the target, the young man raised his chin and shouted, "Now see how you talk big after losing one of your arms." The group imagined the handsome man to suffer badly from the attack, but after the dust and wind calmed down, they saw the man was patting the beautiful girl's clothes while saying, "Aitg, it seems that we should change your clothes later." How could it be? Before the man finished his words, Jinzuyan turned to him and said, "You dirtied my fiancée's clothes, so you can't blame me for retaliating." As soon as he finished his words, he waved his hand, and a wisp of black flame shot toward the man at a fast speed. Before they could react, the black flame had already hit the man. The next second, the black flame suddenly ignited and burned the man. Feeling the pain, the man let out a scream as he rolled on the ground, trying to extinguish the flame. One of the ability users quickly raised his hand toward the lake. 10 seconds later, several water balls flew towards the man. Seeing this, Jiang Lixin and Chen Ji exchanged glances. From what they knew, water-type ability users should be able to produce water, albeit not much, but this person would rather use the lake water instead and risk the delay. Is it because he couldn't create water? The sound of water evaporating was heard in the area. As soon as the water balls hit the young man, they turned into vapor and failed to extinguish the black flame. Save me. The young man continued to roll and cried as the black flame burned his body. When everyone thought that the man would be burned to death, their leader came over and said, "Comrade, please show mercy." Hearing this, Jinzuyan glanced at his fiancée, and when he saw her nod, he waved his hand and took back the black flame. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. They also had several fire-type ability users in their group, but none of them were able to take back their fire. This man was much more dangerous than they thought. When the leader arrived, he looked at his team members and saw that although he was burned, the injuries were only skin injuries. With proper treatment, he would recover in 2 months. It's just that his previous thick hair was no longer there. Due to the burning, his head had turned bald with ugly scars. Even his body and face were not spared. After a moment he said, "Bring him to the infirmary and treat his wound." Hearing this, the rest of the group quickly carried the man away, leaving their boss there. Standing a few meters from them, the leader said, "Comrade, you said you want to go sightseeing and we are kind enough to let you in. Is this how you repay us?" When he heard his words, Jinzuyan chuckled and replied, "I don't know if you overestimate yourself or underestimate me and my team. Do you think we don't know why you let us in?" "What do you mean by that?" the leader asked. Without waiting for him to pretend to be innocent, Zhao Lijai waved her hand and took out the part of the tentacle she cut off before from the giant octopus. The moment the tentacle appeared, everyone took a sharp breath. Due to the large size of the tentacles, they didn't notice that some places of the tentacles had teeth marks, left by Fuguari. After a moment, Zhao Lijai stored it back in her space. As soon as the tentacle reappeared inside the space, Fuguari's eyes lit up. He quickly held onto the tentacle and ran to the grassland, fearing that someone would take away his food again. Outside the space, Zhao Lijai smiled and said, "Comrade, we have killed the giant octopus, so you and your team don't have to worry about this matter anymore. Since we have helped you solve this problem, shouldn't you thank us instead of attacking us?" The leader was stunned by the massive tentacle. Even though he wasn't sure if these people had killed the giant octopus or not, just the fact that they came back alive and brought the tentacle proves that they were stronger than him and his team. It's not a wise decision to go against people that much stronger than them. After considering the pros and cons, the leader finally said, "Let them go." When his team heard this, they quickly opened the gate and watched them leave with fear in their eyes. The moment they stepped out the gate, they quickly closed the gate and locked it. Seeing this, Zyro Kai asked, "Captain, what happened? Why did they look so scared?" Hearing his words, Jin Zuyin gave him a glance and said, "It's still early. We should go check the hospital first." Following his words, Zhao Lijai took out the armored vehicles from her space. Since their captain didn't want to elaborate on what happened at the lake, the members decided not to ask. After leaving the lake area, the Phantom team drove toward the provincial-level city. Their next destination was the city's hospital. Since Mo Junji had requested laboratory tools, they needed to check both the hospital and the research center. Several hours later, they finally reached the provincial city at noon. Checking the map in his mind, Chin Luzi used his walkie-talkie and said, "Captain, there's a group of zombies at the gas station, 5 meters away, and some scattered zombies in the area." Hearing this, Jin Zuyin replied, "Let's go to the gas station first and take a rest before we head to the hospital." Understood. When they reached the gas station, Lee Sikai opened the door and stepped out of the car. In the next moment, he created a lightning barrier and pushed the zombies back, clearing an area of 50 square meters. After he cleared the area, the rest of the members got out of the vehicles, and Zhao Lijai stored the armored vehicles back into her space. Looking at the number of zombies in the area, Jin Zuyin said, "Be careful of explosions." The moment they heard his words, the members nodded and replied in unison, "Understood." Since they were at a gas station, they avoided using airguns or abilities. Instead, they pulled out their blades and began chopping the zombies like cabbages. Seeing the black blood and rotten flesh splatter everywhere, Mo Junji took out a handkerchief, covered his nose and mouth, and let out a weak cough. Noticing this, Zhao Lijai took out a bottle of pond water from her space and handed it to him, saying, "Brother Mo, drink some water and take a rest. We'll take care of it." Mo Junji accepted the water and replied, "Thank you, sister." After making sure he was okay, Zhao Lijai joined the others, killing zombies with vigor. Leaning against the wall, Mo Junji watched them with a frown. Just the thought of that sticky blood touching his skin made goosebumps rise on his arms. He couldn't understand how they could be so nonchalant while covered in such filth. Although there were nearly 1,000 zombies, the Phantom team had grown stronger and more experienced in battle. Most of them were also on the verge of breaking through to the next level. As a result, it only took them an hour to clear all the zombies in and around the gas station. After they were done, the Phantom team members gathered the zombies' corpses in the road not far from the gas station. Before Shen Jinj could burn the corpses, Feng Yun suddenly said, "Brother Shen, please wait a moment." Hearing this, Shen Jinj stopped and asked, "What's wrong?" Feng Yun looked at the pile of zombies' corpses thoughtfully for a while before he said, "I was thinking that since we can burn these zombies, would it be possible for us to use them as fuel?" The moment he said this, the members' eyes flickered with surprise. After a moment, Yin Yusheng said, "It's not impossible to use them as fuel. Right now, we are in the summer season. When we enter the winter season, we will need to find firewood or coals as fuel to keep the temperature warm. Even if we manage to find firewood or coals, the amount wouldn't be enough to sustain the entire base. But zombies are everywhere. We can just burn them as fuel and use a central heating system to keep the temperature warm indoors," he added. As soon as they heard this, the previously nauseating, hard-to-deal zombies' corpses now looked like a pile of fuel in their eyes. "But how can we store them? If we put them directly into our space, it might contaminate the supplies in our space," Zyro Kai asked. Hearing this, Wenmo said, "We can just compress them and seal them off in a metal cube. Without air leakage, we don't have to worry the zombie virus will contaminate the supplies in your space." When they heard his words, they nodded in agreement. Afterward, they looked at the Wen brothers and said, "Then, we will leave this matter to you, brothers." This time, Wen Kai and Wenmo let out a sigh and thought, "In the end, the job is still left for us to do." Since they had to compress the zombies' corpses into a cube, Chin Luzi was called over by them. After they explained their plans, he nodded and said, "No problem." Raising his hands, he flicked his wrists several times, and the zombies' corpses were turned into a 5 cubic meters cube. 1,000 corpses were pressed into a cube. Just by this alone, they knew how tightly they were pressed. After he was done, Wen Kai and Wen Mo created 6 metal plates and sealed the zombies' corpses tightly. When the cube was done, they couldn't even smell the rancid stench coming from it. "It should be safe now," Wen Mo said with satisfaction. Feng Yun nodded, and with a wave of his hand, he stored the cube into his space. To make sure that everything was safe, he put the cube at the corner and created a space barrier to separate it from the area where he stored the supplies. With double protection, he was confident that this method would work. When they were done cleaning up, they went to the gas station and saw their captain and sister-in-law were cleaning up the convenience store. Seeing how Zhao Lijai stored everything, they recalled how she even took away the underground oil tanks. This gas station was the largest in the county town. From the previous experiences, she would take away the underground oil tanks again. They entered the convenience store and asked, "Captain, should we cook lunch or just eat a self-heating meal?" Since they have fresh ingredients, they prefer to eat a warm meal. So Zhao Lijai said, "We just caught a giant octopus in the lake. Let's have hot and sour seafood noodles for lunch." After she said this, she checked her space and saw Fu Guari was sleeping while hugging the giant octopus tentacle. He only ate 1/3 of the tentacle, so Zhao Lijai took out the rest. The moment the tentacle appeared, everyone was shocked. Fortunately, Zhao Lijai already stored everything in the store to her space, so there is a lot of space for this tentacle. With a wave of her hand, a water blade flew at the tentacle at a fast speed and sliced off a little part of it, weighing around 30 kilograms. Then, she stored the rest of the tentacle back into her space. While they were busy cooking outside, inside the space, Fu Guari raised his head and stared at the foggy sky with resentment. He didn't know why that person was always snatching away his food. If she came again next time, he would let her know that he was unhappy. With this thought, he hugged the tentacle tightly and went back to sleep. During his sleep, the energy he obtained from eating the mutant octopus, mutant fruits, and pond water was slowly absorbed by a crystal core embedded inside his brain. Besides the transparent crystal core that was artificially planted on his brain, the silver crystal core located several inches under his navel was also absorbing the energy frantically. The more it absorbed the energy, the purer it became. The previous dark lines on the crystal were slowly disappearing one by one, revealing its true appearance. Not knowing that she had offended someone, Zhao Lijai was enjoying her noodles. Due to their big appetite, they prepared 4 big pots of noodles, and they managed to clear everything in less than an hour. After filling their bellies, everyone cleaned up the pots and utensils before they went to get a nap. Since they were outside, Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan took the initiative to guard the area, while the rest of the team went for a short nap. While they were chatting, Jin Zuyan suddenly said with a frown, "Energy fluctuation. Someone is advancing." Hearing this, the two of them quickly went to check on the members. The moment they saw the situation, both of them were stunned. They had seen lots of bizarre things in their past life, but this was the first time for them to witness so many people breaking through at the same time while sleeping. It took Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan a moment to regain their composure. Taking out a box of crystal cores from her space, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, we should wake up the members who didn't break through so they can help guard the rest." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "I will wake them up, you check on them."
Okay.
While Jin Zuyan was waking up the members, Zhao Lijai shoved a handful of crystal cores into the hands of the members who were breaking through. 10 minutes later, they had already placed the members undergoing the breakthrough process neatly on the ground. At this moment, besides Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai, only Mo Junji and Chen Jianfeng hadn't undergone the breakthrough. The rest of the team was currently in a coma. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai didn't know whether this was a blessing or not. The duration of a breakthrough also depended on the individual, ranging from several hours to several days. Since they couldn't leave the members alone, they could only change their plans and stay until everyone woke up. At the same time, Li Kixuan finally saw the base's wall after traveling for 2 days. If it had taken one more day, he might have ended up hitting the noisy children or fainted from annoyance. Seeing the high wall, not only did he feel excited, but even the children and teachers couldn't help letting out a sigh of relief. For them, traveling with an ability user was the safest, but the person traveling with them had a bad temper and clearly disliked children. So along the way, the atmosphere was suffocating and tense. Now, seeing the base, they were finally able to part ways with this irritable person and begin a stable life. When the guards saw 2 school buses approaching, 2 of them walked to the middle of the road and blocked them. One of them walked over after the buses stopped and said, "If you want to enter the base, you have to undergo an inspection and pay an entrance fee." Hearing this, the teacher opened the door and stepped out before he asked, "Comrade, we are coming from Pingjiang City. These are my students and colleagues. May I know how much the entrance fee is?" The guard was surprised to see so many little heads peeking out at him from the windows and said, "All of you follow me." The teacher nodded and returned to the bus. As the soldier walked to the left gate, he informed his superior about the situation. Soon after, they arrived at a tent near the left gate and the soldier said, "Everyone come out." Following his words, the teachers led the children out of the buses. After everyone was out, Lee Kixuan exited at a leisurely pace. The moment the soldier saw the emblem carved into the metal plate on his necklace, his eyes lit up and he said, "So, it's a member of the Phantom team. Comrade, welcome back." Lee Kixuan nodded and said, "My captain asked me to send them back to the base. Some of these children have already awakened their abilities. As for the adults, they were teachers." Hearing this, the soldier smiled and said, "I will report this matter to my team leader. Thank you for your hard work, comrade." Lee Kixuan nodded and walked into the tent for inspection. After he took off his clothes, the soldier checked his body for a while before saying, "Comrade, you have a great muscle proportion." "It's nothing compared to you," Lee Kixuan replied while putting his clothes back on. He looked at the soldier with an amused gaze. The reason he didn't feel embarrassed was because he was actually wearing a nanotech suit, so technically, he hadn't been seen naked. What they saw was only the projection created by the suit. After finishing the inspection, he walked into the base without even giving the children a glance. Seeing him leave, the children's eyes reddened as they held back their tears. Even if they were afraid of that big brother, he had protected them and kept them safe. They were reluctant to part with him. Noticing the children's expressions, the soldier smiled and said, "If you miss that big brother, you can find him later. He's a member of the Phantom team and they live in the first ring area." Hearing this, one of the children asked, "Brother, what is that brother's name?" The soldier thought for a while before saying, "I only know that his surname is Lei." "So it's Brother Lei," the children nodded and tried to remember the name. Seeing how cute the children were, the soldier couldn't help but pat their heads and said, "Okay, let's go inside the tent and do your inspection." "Okay." While they were listening to the soldier's explanation about the base's rules, the teams sent by the base to retrieve supplies returned. These were the third batch of supplies taken back from Yunshan City's border. With the help of space-type ability users, it only took them a day to clear out a granary. Now, the teams sent to the Yunshan border were clearing zombies from the second location. When the survivors waiting in line to register saw this, their eyes finally lit up with hope. With so many supplies, surely they would be able to find work and have a full belly. Thanks to this newfound supply, the recruitment process went smoothly. At the same time, the team sent by Zun Qi arrived at several survivor camps located in Linan City. One of the teams was led by Wang He, and they arrived at a camp located east of the city center. When they saw the barricades and dilapidated gate, the soldiers exchanged glances while Wang He shook his head. With this kind of defense, they'd end up as zombie food when the next rain came. Seeing the incoming cars, the guards raised their weapons and shouted, "Stop right there." Wang He's team parked their cars and one of them stepped out. He raised his hands and said, "Comrade, we are from Linan Base, here to recruit workers under Captain Zun Qi's command." The moment the guards heard this, one of them went inside to inform their boss while the rest blocked the gate. They had heard rumors about Zun Qi's base and half believed the news. After all, who would be willing to use supplies to hire people to build a wall? But despite their skepticism, there were always some people who left the base with the excuse of looking for supplies and never returned. Since they didn't have formal regulations, they couldn't stop them from leaving or force them to come back, so they could only watch as the number of people in their camp decreased day by day. Now that their camp was on the verge of collapse, these people were actually bold enough to come here and openly recruit. If they didn't teach them a lesson, these people might really think they were easy to bully. While the guards were staring at them with resentment, Wang He and his team remained calm as they exited their cars and waited patiently. 20 minutes later, a group of people led by a young man walked out of the gate. Standing 10 meters away from them, the young man said, "I don't know what your boss is planning by recruiting my people, but we have no intention of accepting your offer. You can go back to where you came from." Hearing this, Wang He smiled and said calmly, "Comrade, you might want to hear what I have to say first before making your decision." "There's no need for further discussion. We won't agree to your offer," the young man replied stubbornly. Wang He let out a chuckle at his attitude and said, "As the leader, you should think more about your people's safety instead of being stuck on your foolish pride." As soon as he finished speaking, the young man narrowed his eyes and said, "What did you just say?" Taking out a cigarette from his pocket, Wang He lit it up and let out a sigh before saying, "Young man, judging by your behavior, you must have been a commoner before the apocalypse." "So what if I was?" the young man asked. Nodding in understanding, Wang He replied, "No wonder you didn't receive any information from the capital." Hearing his words, the young man hesitated for a moment before asking, "Did something happen in the capital?" Instead of answering directly, Wang He said, "If you want to know more, how about inviting me and my team inside?" The young man thought for a while before finally saying, "Let them in." With his order, the guards reluctantly removed the barricades and allowed them entry. As Wang He's team drove into the camp, they observed the surroundings and quickly realized the camp was poorly managed. Compared to Wei Weiying's camp, this place felt more like a loose gathering of several groups. From the way the survivors eyed them with guarded suspicion, Wang He could tell the crime rate here must be high. This only confirmed that the camp lacked proper rules, and everything was governed by strength. If left unchecked, this law of the jungle would eventually lead to chaos. While he was mentally assessing the camp's situation, they arrived at the main building. Exiting the car, Wang He raised his head and looked at the 3-story house in front of him. Unlike Zun Qi's base, this camp was established in an old residential area. The buildings were worn down and security was poor. With so few guards, it was a miracle these people had survived this long. Not knowing what he was thinking, the young man said, "Come in." This time only Wang He and his vice-captain entered, while the rest of their team waited outside. Seeing this, the young man raised his eyebrows. Since the other party was showing a gesture of peace, he decided to spare them some time. After entering the building, the young man gestured for them to take a seat and said, "Now you can tell me the reason for your visit." Even though they had not been received warmly, Wang He smiled and replied, "Before we get to our purpose for coming, I'd like to share some information from the capital." 2 weeks ago, the capital fell due to a massive zombie horde, and the central government no longer exists. The last information we managed to obtain before the fall was about an upcoming rain in 2 months. Hearing this, the young man frowned and said, "We have been lacking water. Wouldn't it be good news if there's going to be rain in 2 months? Shaking his head, Wang He asked, "Comrade, do you remember what happened after the first rain?" The young man thought for a moment before his eyes widened. He looked at him for a while before he asked with fear, "You mean the second rain will cause the same thing as before?" "We hope it's no worse than the first one, but from what we have gathered, the next rain may be even more severe. That's why we are strengthening our defenses and building higher walls, to prepare for another zombie horde," Wang He explained. "So that's why your base has been recruiting so many people lately?" the young man asked. "That's one of the reasons," Wang He said, pulling a small booklet from his pocket and placing it on the table. "What is that?" the young man asked, suspicious. "This booklet contains our base's regulations, rules, punishments, point systems, mission grades, everything. We hope you will consider bringing your people to join us. That way we can reduce casualties when the second rain arrives and find a way to survive," Wang He replied. The young man took the booklet and read it for a long time. He read every word carefully before closing it and falling into deep thought. Compared to leading this small camp, it would be better to join a larger base and focus on developing his own team. Not to mention, he hardly gained anything from managing these survivors. At times, he even had to use his own supplies just to stabilize the situation. After he considered the pros and cons, the young man finally said, "The survivors staying in my camp are not my people. I don't have any authority to make a decision for them. You can ask them by yourself regarding this matter." Wang He nodded at his words and asked, "How about you and your team? Are you interested in joining the Linen base?" The young man tapped his fingers on the armrest for a while before he asked him back, "If we join the base, what benefits can you give us?" Hearing this, Wang He smiled and replied, "It will depend on what roles you take when you join the base." "What do you mean by that?" the young man asked with a frown. Noticing his confusion, Wang He explained, "If your team joins as regular members, you will have to pay a registration fee and earn points from doing jobs at the base or doing missions outside the base. You will receive the same treatments as the rest of the base members. If you join as guards, you will be registered as a base member without the need to pay. You will also receive a monthly salary, monthly supplies, and can live in the dormitory. But before you can become a guard, you have to join the daily training for at least a month and pass the test," he added. The young man thought for a moment and glanced at his team. Just from their excited expressions and bright eyes, he knew that his team members were eager to join the base. Since they didn't have any objection to working under others, he also had no reason to stop them. After a moment of silence, he said, "We will join your base as guards." When Wang He heard his words, he nodded and took out a piece of paper from his pocket. He showed them the map and said, "The base is located in the Mount Peak Garden area near Linen University." The young man checked the map for a moment and replied, "My team will depart as soon as possible." Good. Wang He stood up and left the building. Since they had said that he had to convince the survivors by himself, he went to the small open field at the center of the camp. When the survivors saw him and his team, most of them went to their tents, unwilling to have any interaction with strangers. Only some of them got closer to see what this group was planning. Seeing that there were some people who were interested, Wang He said with a smile, "Everyone, we are the guards sent by the base commander of the Linen base. We are here to recruit people to build the base's wall and buildings." The survivors' interest was piqued when they heard that they came to recruit people. When there were jobs, there would be payment. With this thought, one of the survivors raised his hand and asked, "Comrade, since you said you are recruiting workers, will we get a salary?" Hearing this, Wang He smiled and replied, "For temporary workers, they will receive 1 crystal core daily, and the base will provide lunch and drinking water. As for permanent base residents, they will receive 15 points daily, and the base will provide 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch." The moment he said this, another survivor asked, "Comrade, why is the payment for temporary workers and permanent base residents different?" "It's because our base has a point system. For those who registered as our base members, they will receive a metal plate as their identity card and will be registered on our base's system. This way we can issue a card to store their points, similar to an ATM card in the pre-apocalypse era," Wang He replied. After a moment of pause, he continued, "As for those temporary workers, we can only pay them with a crystal core since the points can only be used for transactions at the Linen base for now. But the value of the crystal core is 20 points, therefore, we cut down the meal to balance out the payment." The survivors exchanged glances with each other after hearing his explanation. By now, more survivors came out of their tents to hear his explanation. "Comrade, if we want to register as base members, what should we do?" another survivor asked. Wang He looked at the survivors and said, "To be registered as a member, you have to pay a registration fee. The registration fee could be paid using crystal cores or supplies. But if you have neither, you can borrow it from the base. After you register as a member, you can take a mission and go outside or work at the base to earn points. By then, you can pay back your debt." "What should we do with it?" a young woman asked. Hearing this, Wang He took out a piece of paper and unfolded it. He showed the base's rough design to them and said, "You can use the points to buy supplies, rent, or buy a residence from the Linen base. At this moment, we are expanding the base's territory and building more settlements for everyone. When we finish building the base, we will be able to accommodate around 500,000 people." If before the survivors only had a slight interest, the moment they saw the base's design and heard that they could buy a house using the points, their eyes finally flickered with hope. As a social species, humans would yearn to have a stable home and community. Therefore, being able to buy a house has always been a dream of many. While the survivors were excited and wanted to go there, the problem was they were too weak due to malnutrition and lack of food. Even killing a normal zombie took a lot of effort. What if they met with a high-level zombie on the way? Noticing their concerns, Wang He said, "If you are interested in joining the Linen base, you can follow us back. We will escort you back to the base." As soon as he said this, the survivors erupted in hushed cheers. Seeing this, Wang He smiled and said, "We will depart in 30 minutes. Everyone who wants to join us can gather at the entrance. My team will prepare the buses." After he said this, he left the open field with his team. This time, he brought a total of 30 soldiers with him. He divided the team into 3 groups and asked them to find several buses. There were lots of abandoned cars on the road. If they couldn't find buses, it was fine to bring some cars back. As for the fuel, they would pump the gas from those cars that couldn't be used and refuel the buses and cars they used. The soldiers worked fast, and in 20 minutes, they managed to drive back 1 commercial bus, 3 light trucks, and 1 medium truck. Seeing this, Wang He said, "Divide the team into 5 teams of 5. Each team will guard 1 vehicle. The rest will drive back our cars." "Understood," the soldiers replied in unison. When he finished arranging the team, the survivors and the young man's team had already gathered at the entrance. Wang He glanced at his watch and said, "Everyone, we should leave now so we can reach the gas station before dark." Under the soldiers' arrangement, everyone boarded the vehicles, and they departed 20 minutes later. The same situation happened in several survivor camps located near Linen City Center. As for the survivor camps located farther from the Linen base, the teams sent to recruit people were still on their way. For the next 2 days, the teams returned with group after group of survivors. With more people joining their bases, the number of workers also increased, speeding up the wall building progress. Meanwhile, at the gas station located in the provincial city near Zhen Lake, Jin Zuyan was busy feeding pond water to the members who were still undergoing the breakthrough process, while Zhao Lijai was busy checking on the conditions of the members who had woken up. After 2 days, only Feng Yun and Yin Yusheng had not woken up. When they finished their meals, the members tried out their abilities to see the difference. Besides a larger energy pool, the rest remained the same. At noon, Feng Yun and Yin Yusheng finally woke up. As they opened their eyes, they looked around in a daze. Compared to before, their 5 senses had improved, and the rancid stench assaulted their nostrils instantly. Yin Yusheng covered his nose and said hoarsely, "What's with the rotten stench?" When they heard his voice, Zyro Kai quickly walked over to check on them. Seeing that the 2 of them had finally woken up, he said, "Brother Yun, Brother Yusheng, the 2 of you finally woke up." Holding onto his head, Feng Yun asked with a frown, "How long have I been unconscious?" "Today is the 3rd day," Zhao Lijai said as she handed them a bottle of pond water. After breaking through, the ability users would feel hungry and thirsty, so she took out lots of self-heating meals for them and added, "Both of you should eat first." "Thank you, sister-in-law," Yin Yusheng said. Now that all of the members had reached level 1, Jin Zuyan said, "Everyone, we will take a rest for today and depart tomorrow. Take this time to familiarize yourself with your ability." "Understood," the members replied in unison. After they finished their meal, Feng Yun checked his space. The moment he saw the size of his space, he was stunned. Noticing his strange behavior, Zyro Kai asked, "Brother Yun, how big is your space now?" "The size of my space became 2,000 square meters and 20 meters tall after I broke through." Hearing this, Feng Yun went silent for a moment before he said, "I don't know the exact size of my space, but it should be around 4,200 square meters with 30 meters height." The moment he heard this, Zyro Kai clutched his chest and said sadly, "Why, how can your space get so big?" Just after he said this, Zhao Lijai replied, "For space-type ability users, the size of their space depends on their mental power. The stronger their mental power is, the bigger their space." "Sister-in-law, how can we train our mental power?" Zyro Kai asked curiously. Zhao Lijai thought for a moment and replied, "Compared to ability power, mental power is harder to train. From what I know, there is no fixed way to train mental power as everyone has a different mental state. But those who are lucky might be able to increase their mental power after encountering a life-and-death situation or solving their heart's demon." "Heart demon, we also have that. Isn't that only a fantasy story?" Feng Yun asked. The term heart demon is indeed mostly used by authors in fantasy stories, but in real-life situations, it could be classified as something you desire, your obsession. For example, revenge. After you kill your enemy and get your revenge, you might be able to increase your mental power if you are lucky, Zhao Lijai replied. "Besides that, is there no other way?" Zyro Kai asked. "I don't know either. Maybe when you reach enlightenment in some things you encounter in your life, you can increase your mental power. After all, your mental power is related to your mental state," Zhao Lijai said with a smile. After they listened to her explanation, the Phantom team members nodded, and some of them were deep in thought. Since everyone wanted to test the limits of their abilities, they decided to clear the surrounding zombies, while Zhao Lijai stayed behind to guard Feng Yun and Yin Yusheng. The Phantom team members woke up feeling refreshed and in a good mood after resting for 3 days. Before leaving, they had a hearty breakfast. Several big pots of chicken and mushroom rice, paired with soothing egg drop soup. After breakfast, they checked their equipment and refilled their mags and cartridges. Zhao Lijai calculated the crystal cores and gave each of them a small pouch. Besides the crystal cores, she also gave them 3 bottles of pond water. As for the medicine and emergency supplies, those were handled by Zyro Kai and Feng Yun. When the sun rose on the eastern horizon, Jin Zuyan said, "Today, our main targets are the hospital and the research laboratory. Everyone, pay more attention to the situation and report if you find survivors. The base needs medical personnel, so it would be best if we could send some back." Hearing this, the members nodded and replied in unison, Understood. Before leaving, Zhao Lijai stored all of the underground oil tanks into her space. When the team members saw this, they were no longer as shocked as before, only Mo Junji glanced at her thoughtfully. After leaving the gas station, the team drove toward the hospital. Although the hospital wasn't far from the gas station, due to blocked roads and zombies, it took them 4 hours to reach it. Looking at the abandoned cars blocking the road, Wen Kai said, "It would be great if we could find several motorbikes. Riding motorbikes would be more convenient than cars on roads like this." Hearing this, Zyro Kai said, "I saw a showroom selling motorbikes just now. After we finish checking the hospital, how about we go there and get some?" The moment they heard his suggestion, everyone nodded and readily agreed. Okay. After the brief conversation, everyone walked toward the hospital. Even before entering the gate, they could hear the roar of zombies coming from inside.
It's raw.
Eager to test their strength, they pulled out their blades instead of their guns. This time, everyone had reached level 1, and facing level 1 zombies no longer posed any threat to them. Compared to before, their way of chopping down zombies was more relaxed and precise. With the improvement of their 5 senses, they managed to kill more than 1,000 zombies in less than 2 hours. While the members were killing zombies in the front, Jin Zuyin used his black flame to burn the corpses, while Zhao Lijai picked up the crystal cores. The two of them walked leisurely behind the team. As she picked up the crystal cores, Zhao Lijai tried to store some of the rotten flesh in her space, but it was rejected. In the end, she could only let out a sigh. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the Phantom team finally finished clearing out the zombies, wandering outside the hospital building. "Seal the gate," Jin Zuyin said. Understood, the Wen brothers replied and built a 4-meter-high metal wall surrounding the hospital. With this gate, they no longer had to worry about zombie attacks. As for other ability users, they didn't concern themselves much with them. Standing outside the building, Chin Luzi checked his map. After breaking through to level 1, his map now covered an area of 1 kilometer with himself as the center point. For specific directional observation, he could check areas up to 2 kilometers away. Besides this improvement, he was now able to merge his wind-type ability with his psychic-type ability. He could pinpoint an area on his map and attack that place directly. This combination allowed him to launch sneak attacks on enemies as long as they were within a 2-kilometer radius. After a while he said, "Captain, the laboratory is located at the back of the hospital. As for the warehouse, it's located to the west of the hospital." "How many zombies are inside?" Jin Zuyin asked. "The rough number of zombies is around 20,000, Chin Luzi replied. Although the number was high, the zombies were trapped inside the building and hadn't been exposed to the first rain. Therefore, they were still stuck at level 0. Even if they managed to eat their own kin, the highest level they could reach was at most level 2. With the team's current strength, not to mention level 2 zombies, even if they faced a level 4 zombie, they would still be able to kill it. Reaching this conclusion, Jin Zuyin said, "Split into 2 teams, with 6 to 7 members each. Feng Yun and Zyro Kai, both of you will join different teams. Ajai and I will go by ourselves." Hearing this, the members nodded and chose their teammates. At this moment, they didn't choose based on relationships, but based on the overall power of the team. As for Mo Junji, he joined Chin Luzi's team. With him around, their safety rate would increase by half. Once they finished dividing into teams, Jin Zuyin said, "Make sure to keep your satellite phones and walkie-talkies on. Report immediately if you encounter danger." Understood, the members replied in unison. After a short briefing on the locations they were responsible for, the team headed in 3 different directions. Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai were responsible for checking the warehouse and the laboratory. Feng Yun's team went to the outpatient and ER areas, while Chin Luzi's team checked the main building. 20 minutes later, Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai arrived at the warehouse area. Compared to other places, the hospital's warehouse consisted of a cold storage room and several regular storage rooms. Standing outside the warehouses, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, let's check the cold storage first." Jin Zuyin had no objection and nodded, "Okay." Without Wenmo around, they had to use their weapons or abilities to open the warehouse gate. With a wave of her hand, Zhao Lijai destroyed the lock using her water blade. Clang! The sound of the lock hitting the ground echoed through the area. Before Zhao Lijai could push open the gate, Jin Zuyin pulled her back and said, "I will go in first." As soon as Jin Zuyan pushed the gate open, cold air seeped through the gaps and spread outward. Sensing this, Zhao Lijai's eyes lit up. Since the air is still cold, the medicine stored inside shouldn't be spoiled. Jin Zuyan nodded and walked inside. The warehouse was a simple room, approximately 500 square meters in size, and filled with shelves and boxes. Both of them only knew common medicine, and had no idea of the purpose of the medicines stored in this warehouse. Even so, it didn't stop Zhao Lijai from taking everything away. Judging from the low hum of the machine, it seems that the power stored in the generator wouldn't hold on for long. If they left the medicines behind, it would be spoiled and couldn't be used anymore. Rather than wasting the limited resources, it's better to take them. After they cleared out the cold warehouse, they checked the other warehouses. Besides medicines, there were also emergency toolkit boxes that included simple tools such as scissors, tweezers, and a thermometer. Since Pingjiang City would have several bases in the future, they didn't plan to take everything in case they altered the future of the people in this city, and left 2/3 of the medicine behind. When they were done, they went to the laboratory area. Compared to the warehouses, they planned to take everything away. In the next few years, humanity would realize the importance of the research data, and the bigger bases would be willing to pay a lot of crystal cores for some data. While the data is still intact, they have to collect as much as they can. The two of them entered the building after breaking the lock. Unlike the warehouse, the laboratory not only has several upper floors, but also 3 underground floors. Fortunately, the laboratory was equipped with a solar power generator, and they still can use the elevator. Perhaps due to the apocalypse happening at midnight, there was no sign of zombies inside the laboratory. The two of them first went to the upper floors and checked the offices. The upper floors were used as office rooms and lounges for the researchers to take a break, so they only found some data. It took them an hour to collect everything into Zhao Lijai's space. When they went to the underground floors, the sun had slanted to the west. They didn't have much time left before sunset. Zhao Lijai exchanged glances with her fiancé, and the two of them sped up their paces. Ding! The elevator reached the first underground floor, and the door opened slowly.
Zra!
Before the door even fully opened, a rotten arm reached into them, followed by a thick rancid stench. Before the sharp claws could touch them, Zhao Lijai waved her hand, and a water blade flew toward the zombie at a fast speed.
Crack!
The next moment, the rotten head rolled to the ground with a thud, as black blood splashed on the elevator's door. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan sent a wisp of black flame to the zombie and burned it. There was no crystal core left behind. Although it was only a level 0 zombie, the two of them didn't lower their guards. Compared to the upper floors, there were several scattered zombies wandering on the underground floor. Before checking the rooms, they cleared all of the zombies first. 15 minutes later, Zhao Lijai entered a room with a huge glass wall. Inside the room, there were several plots of plants. All of the plants had turned yellow and died, leaving a patch of moss on the soil. Seeing the vibrant moss, she was feeling curious but didn't approach the plant pot. Standing a few meters away from the moss, her instinct was telling her that this patch of moss was much more dangerous than a high-level zombie. Recalling the information in her past life about unique mutant plants, she hesitated for a moment before she stored the moss into her space. Unlike the small mutant plant she kept before, the moss showed no reaction after entering her space, as if it was only a normal moss. While she was still observing the moss, Jin Zuyan had already checked the entire floor and returned. Seeing his fiancée standing there in a daze, he said, "Aitg, there was nothing here." Hearing his voice, Zhao Lijai regained her senses and said, "Then let's go to the next floor after I take away the tools."
Okay.
The two of them continued clearing the next underground floors, and took the tools away while the rest of the team were busy clearing out the zombies in the other areas of the hospital. When they left the laboratory, the sky darkened and the red moon rose in the sky. Jin Zuyan took out his walkie-talkie and said, "Everyone, gather at the parking lot." Not long after, Zhang Yuan replied, "Captain, the number of zombies in the ER is too high. We might need 2 hours to clear them out." "Do you need any help?" Jin Zuyan asked. "We can handle it," Zhang Yuan said. "Captain, we are on our way," Qin Luzi said. Jin Zuyan thought for a moment and said, "Go to the ER area and help Zhang Yuan's team."
Okay.
After he put his walkie-talkie back into his pocket, he turned to his fiancée and said, "Aitg, let's go help Zhang Yuan first." Zhao Lijai had no objection and nodded, "Okay." While the Phantom team was busy clearing the zombies in the provincial city's hospital, the linen base was swamped with survivors who came after learning about the recruitment. Usually, the base's gates would be closed half an hour before sunset. But today, even after the red moon rose in the sky, the gates were still open as the soldiers were busy registering and doing body checks on the survivors. To ensure the safety of everyone, the base sent 50 guards to guard the perimeter. When they spotted any wandering zombies, they would take care of it. Besides that, the base also prepared several pots of egg porridge and several tanks of drinking water for the survivors. It had been a month since the apocalypse, and most of the survivors could only have some crackers or biscuits to stay alive. Therefore, when they received a bowl of warm egg porridge, they couldn't help but cry out of gratitude. Standing on top of the wall, Sun Chi let out a sigh as he watched the survivors' condition. He turned to Wen Hanley and asked, "Hanley, how many eggs do we have left?" "Captain, we no longer have any eggs, but we still have around 500 boxes of powdered eggs," Wen Hanley replied. "After our team finishes transporting all the grains from the granaries, we should check if there is husbandry nearby. If we are able to get some animals, we won't have to worry about running out of eggs or meat," Sun Chi said. Hearing this, Wen Hanley went silent for a moment before he said, "Captain, I'm afraid it's not possible for us to get animals." "Why do you say so?" Sun Chi asked. "After the apocalypse, we hardly see any animals. No, to be exact, we see no animals at all. Usually mosquitoes would run rampant during summer, but now we don't even see a mosquito. I'm afraid that the animals have mostly died by now," Wen Hanley replied solemnly. The moment he heard this, Sun Chi's eyes flickered with surprise. After being pointed out by Wen Hanley, he finally realized this strange situation. "We can't depend on vegetables for protein and still need to consume animals. If all the animals have died, then this matter might affect humanity's future," Sun Chi said with a deep frown. "Captain, how about we ask the Phantom team members to help us check out the situation? There is a husbandry located not far from the border between Linen City and Yunshan City," Wen Hanley asked. Hearing this, Sun Chi thought for a moment before he said, "Okay, I will leave this matter to you." Understood. Early the next morning, Wen Hanley visited the Phantom team's residence. As he knocked on the door, he checked his watch. It was already 20 minutes past 7 in the morning, and the children were already on their way to the training field, so Gu Sheos should have woken up. He waited for a while before he heard someone say hoarsely, "Who is it?" Not long after, the door opened, and Rong Kinyu appeared while yawning. Seeing that it was him, Wen Hanley smiled and greeted him. "Good morning, Comrade Rong. Is Comrade Gu at home?" Rong Kinyu scratched his head and said, "Gu Sheos went to the training ground with more." Hearing this, Wen Hanley nodded. "I see. Since Comrade Gu is not at home, I won't bother you any longer." After he finished speaking, he nodded and walked away toward the training ground, watching his back. Rong Kinyu narrowed his eyes. There was not a trace of drowsiness in them at all. 30 minutes later, when Hanley arrived at the training ground, after parking his car, he walked toward the building. Boom! Before he even reached the open field, he already heard the sound of an explosion. In the training ground, Rong Mo was fighting against one of the instructors. Both of them were fire-type ability users, but the way they used their abilities was different. The instructor was wearing a pair of metal gauntlets, covered with orange flame, a sign that he was a melee-type combatant. Bending his knees, he leaped into the air and aimed his punch at her. Boom! Crack! Seeing the incoming attack, Rong Mo jumped to the side and raised her hands. The next moment, 2 red fireballs flew toward the instructor at high speed. Boom! Standing on the cracked ground, the instructor raised one hand and launched a fireball to intercept the attack. The fireballs explode upon contact, raising a wave of dust in the surroundings. As she landed, Rong Mo scanned the area. Before she could find the instructor's location, she felt a gust of wind whistle past her ear. Duog! The next moment before she could react, she was kicked by the instructor and sent flying several meters before landing with a loud thud. Seeing this, the instructor stood in place and said, "Comrade Rong, you are too dependent on your ability. In a life-and-death situation, your combat skills and stamina are more important than your ability." Lying on the ground, Rong Mo coughed up a mouthful of blood. After taking several deep breaths, she finally managed to suppress the rampaging energy in her body. Rather than hastily attacking your enemy using your ability, you should find the best combat style that could preserve your ability energy as long as possible. Another option is to train your stamina and physical strength and fight using a weapon, the instructor added. Standing up, Rongmo wiped the blood from her lips and said, "Thank you for your guidance, sir." As the dust settled, Gu Shao's walked over to her and asked, "Mo, are you all right?" Rongmo nodded and replied, "I'm okay." It had been 5 days since she almost died during the mission. She had been severely injured and only woke up 3 days later. Today was her second day of training. Although she didn't feel anything particularly different about her body, she noticed that it was harder to control her energy compared to before. Thinking about this, she touched her arm where the scar from the high-level zombie remained. Due to the infection, the doctors had to cut out the rotten flesh, leaving a long, ugly scar on her arm. Even after the wound was healed, the temperature around the scar was lower than the rest of her body. Noticing his girlfriend lost in thought again, Gu Shao's asked with a hint of worry, "Mo, what's wrong?" Hearing his voice, Rongmo snapped out of her thoughts and said with a smile, "Shao's, I'm just a little tired." "Then let's rest for a while," he said. "Okay." The two of them walked to the rest area and saw Wen Hanley approaching with a smile. Seeing him, Gu Shao said, "Comrade Wen, what a coincidence." Wen Hanley smiled at them and said, "It's not a coincidence. Comrade Gu, I came especially to find you." Hearing this, Gu Shao's raised his eyebrows and asked, "Is there anything you need from me?" Wen Hanley handed a folder to him and said, "Comrade Gu, this is the information about the husbandry located at the border between Linan City and Yunshan City. We want to hire you and your team to check on the situation in that area." Gu Shao's read the information for a moment before he asked, "You only need my team to check the situation?" When Hanley nodded and replied, "Yes." The moment he heard this, Gu Shao's let out a chuckle and said, "Comrade Wen, if the base only wants to check the situation on the border, you can send the soldiers. There is no need to hire my team." Knowing that Gu Shao's wouldn't accept the mission if he didn't tell him the truth, when Hanley said, "Recently, we noticed that there were no plants or animals spotted after the apocalypse. Although we can find seeds and try to plant crops, we need to find animals so we can breed them. But right now, not to mention livestock, there is not even a mosquito. Therefore, we want your team to check the situation in the husbandry. If possible, we want you to bring back some living animals." After hearing his words, both Gu Shao's and Rongmo realized that they indeed hadn't seen any animals. Not to mention small animals such as mosquitoes, they hadn't even seen wild cats or dogs on the road. The two of them exchanged glances for a moment before Gu Shao's said, "I will inform my captain so they can check the situation at the other places. As for the husbandry, we will accept the mission." When Hanley nodded and said, "The reward for this mission is 10,000 points. If you are able to bring back some animals, we will add 2,000 points for each animal." Gu Shao's nodded and said, "Deal." After Wen Hanley left the training ground, Rongmo said, "Shao's, I will go with you." Recalling what happened to his girlfriend when they went to do their own mission, Gu Shao's nodded and said, "After what happened to you, we will do the mission together. I won't let you get hurt again." Rongmo nodded and asked, "Should we invite my cousin for this mission?" Gu Shao's went silent for a moment before he said, "Mo, I think something is not right about your cousin." "Shao's, what do you mean by that?" Rongmo asked with a frown. Gu Shao's thought for a moment before he replied, "Think about it. When we found your brother, he was tired, but his mind was very stable. If what he said about your family was true, his psychological state should not be that stable. Watching your loved ones turn into zombies or get killed in front of you is not an ordinary experience. Under normal circumstances, he should show signs of stress. But your cousin, he could eat and sleep well as if nothing happened," he added. After being pointed out by her boyfriend, Rongmo's eyes widened in shock. She recalled everything from the moment she met her cousin until now. Suddenly, she felt a chill running down her spine, and her body trembled due to shock. She grabbed her boyfriend's arm and said, "Shao's, you mean that my brother is lying? My family is still alive." Gu Shao's shook his head and replied, "I don't know if he was lying about your family or not, but I'm sure he is hiding something from us, and he is using your family's matter to stop you from looking for them." When she heard this, Rongmo went silent and was lost in her thoughts. After a long time, she finally said, "Shao's, I want to find out what happened to my family." "Okay, we will use this mission to find out the news about your family, so we won't bring your cousin with us," Gu Shao's said. After they reached an agreement, the two of them returned to the Phantom team's residence. Meanwhile, Rong Kinyu was wandering in the market area. As he walked, he observed the situation with interest. Compared to the other bases or survivor camps he had visited before, Linen Base had the best condition. Not only did they provide jobs to the survivors, but they also subsidized the children, increasing their survival chances. Besides that, they had enough residences to rent out and let the survivors borrow points or pay in installments, so there was no slum area in the base. With the addition of the market, the economy of the base was improving. With these factors combined, the living conditions in this base were similar to the pre-apocalypse era. While he walked around the market, he didn't forget to gather the latest news from the survivors. Squatting at one of the stalls, he asked, "Brother, what are you selling?" Seeing that someone was interested in his goods, the seller replied with a smile, "Brother, my stall sells cigarettes, branded alcohol, and some medicines. The price for my goods is reasonable. Which one do you want?" Rong Kinyu took a pack of cigarettes and said, "How much is this?" "It's 50 points or 3 crystal cores," the seller said. Raising his eyebrows, Rong Kinyu said, "Brother, 1 crystal core is equal to 20 points. How can you charge more when it comes to the crystal core?" "Brother, when you pay using points, you get a discount. This is the unwritten rule, ah." Hearing this, Rong Kinyu tossed 3 crystal cores to the seller and asked, "Brother, I'm new here. Is there any interesting news lately?" After selling his goods, the seller was in a good mood and replied, "There is not much happening lately, but the base has been recruiting a lot of workers recently. I heard from my friend, who works as a guard, that there will be another rain in less than 2 months." Hearing the seller's words, Rong Kinyu said with doubt, "Isn't it a good thing to have rain? The temperature keeps increasing every day and we have no water. If we can have some rain, it will lower the temperature and we can have water to drink." When the seller heard this, he gestured for him to lean closer before he whispered, "Brother, you might not know, but the rain is not good news. I heard that the next rain might cause another wave of mutations. This is the reason why the base is rushing to finish the wall." This time, Rong Kinyu was surprised by the news and said, "If the mutations happen due to the rain, then building a wall won't help at all. After all, people who live inside the base have the chance to mutate and become zombies too. By then, how can we escape if we are locked behind the wall?" The seller shook his head and replied, "Brother, that might be the case in other places, but our base commander already found the solution. When the rain comes, we only have to follow the order and we will be fine." "What solution?" Rong Kinyu asked. "I don't know. The information given by my friend is already the most detailed you can find from the public. To get more specific information, we have to ask the higher-ups," the seller replied. Rong Kinyu nodded and said, "Thank you for your information, brother." After he tossed another crystal core to the seller, he stood up and walked away. He strolled for another hour before returning to the Phantom team's residence. When he came back, he saw his cousin and Gu Sheos were packing up their backpacks. Seeing this, he asked, "Are both of you going out for a mission?" Rong Mo turned when she heard her cousin's voice and replied, "Cousin, you are back. We accepted a mission from the base and will depart soon." Hearing this, Rong Kinyu said, "Wait for me, I will go pack up my things and join you." Before he could go to his room, Rong Mo said, "Cousin, this mission is addressed to the Phantom team. Since you are not an official member yet, you can't join us. For now, you stay at the base and familiarize yourself first. If you feel bored, you can take a mission in the mission hall. We will be back in a few days." Rong Kinyu observed his cousin for a while and didn't see any sign of her being suspicious of him. Thinking what she said made sense, he nodded and said, "Okay, be careful when you are outside." "I know," Rong Mo replied with a smile. After some brief conversation with him, Rong Mo and Gu Sheos left the house. Standing at the entrance, Rong Kinyu watched them leave thoughtfully. Now that they were no longer around to monitor him, it was time to get down to business. With this thought, he left the house and went to the central ring area. At each wall there were 4 gates which were guarded by the soldiers. The closer the wall was toward the central area, the stricter the inspection. An hour later, Rong Kinyu was lining up at the entrance of the central area. The first ring wall was only 4 meters high and 2 meters thick. Compared to the outer layer's walls, this central wall was much weaker, but with more soldiers stationed on the wall to guard the entrance, it made up for the weakness. When it was his turn, the guard checked his ID plate and said, "This area is a restricted area. Only personnel are allowed to enter. You don't have the permission to enter the area." Rong Kinyu smiled and replied, "Can you relay my message to your base commander? Just tell him that someone from Yunshan City base is here for a cooperation deal." The moment the soldiers heard that this had something to do with another base, they didn't dare to delay or make their own decision. After exchanging glances, one of them said, "I will inform the higher-ups. You wait here." Ronquinhu nodded and waited on the side while taking out a pack of jerky. Opening the package, he ate it slowly under everyone's gazes. Half an hour later, a group of people walked out of the central area and asked, "Where is the person?" The soldier pointed to the side and replied, "He is the one." The group nodded and walked over. Standing a few steps from him, one of them said, "Comrade, the base commander is waiting for you. Please come with me." Hearing this, Ronquinhu finished his jerky and followed them. As they walked, he drank some water and asked, "Comrade, I see that your base is still building the wall. How long will it take to finish the wall?" The soldiers glanced at him but remained silent. Their orders were to escort and observe. Until he could be confirmed as a friend, he was still treated as a potential threat. Seeing that they ignored him, Ronquinhu was not angry. They walked for 40 minutes before they reached the main building. Looking at the tall office building, he raised his eyebrows. Thanks to the solar panels and generators given by the Phantom team, they were able to have electricity in several important places. After entering the building, they took the elevator to the 12th floor where the meeting room was located. With a ding, the elevator arrived in less than 5 minutes. Walking out of the elevator, Ronquinhu observed the situation in the building and noticed that the design of this floor was similar to the marketing office of an elite residence. The large area on both sides of the elevator is now used as office cubicles where the staff were working seriously. When he walked past them, they only glanced at him for a moment before returning to their work. Due to the limited electrical power, they have to do everything manually. Only the team leader could use a laptop to write a report after receiving the data from the staff. Several minutes later, they arrived at the meeting room. With glass walls, they could see Zun Qi when Hanley and several people were already waiting inside. Knocking on the door, the soldier opened it and said, "Commander, the guest is here." Zun Qi stood up and said with a smile, "Welcome to Linen Base, comrade. May I know what your name is?" Ronquinhu walked over to him, reached out his hand and said, "Hello, Commander Zun. My name is Ronquinhu, a messenger sent by Yunshan City Base's commander." Hearing this, Zun Qi shook his hand for a moment before he gestured for him to take a seat and said, "Comrade Rong, I heard that you are Rong Mo's cousin. I never expected you to be a messenger from Yunshan City." After taking his seat, Ronquinhu smiled and replied, "Besides completing my mission, I came to this city to look for my cousin, and it's a pleasant surprise for me to meet her during my mission. But putting that aside, my commander has a letter for you." When he finished his words, he took out a letter from his inner pocket and handed it over while saying, "Commander Zun, from how you are rushing to build the base's wall, I believe you heard about what happened in the capital. This time, my commander sent me over to talk about a cooperation deal with your base." Zun Qi opened the letter and read it for a while. He thought that the person who claimed to be the Yunshan base's commander would be someone from the military. Unexpectedly, this person was a young politician who just took her post not long before the apocalypse. After reading the letter, he already understood the rough situation at Yunshan City. Compared to Linen City, the situation at Yunshan City was better as the survivors built their camps and fought the zombies together. But with so many survivor camps and small bases, it was hard to divide everything evenly. Because of this, the competition to get supplies was fierce. Internal and external conflict rose every once in a while under the pressure of the food shortage. Putting down the letter, Zun Qi said, "Your commander's letter states that she wants to send a group of engineers to help me build my base, but what did she want in exchange?" Ronquinhu smiled and said, "We lack food and water, so we want your base to supply us with food and water every month. Don't worry, we won't take the supplies for free. We will pay it according to the market price." Zun Qi tapped his finger on the armrest for a moment before he said, "You have explored the base and must know about the rough situation of my base. For the base to meet the demands of our own residents was already the limit. If we sell our supplies to your base, we would face a food shortage. We can find the engineers slowly. After all, it will take at least 2 to 3 years to finish building all the walls. We are not in a hurry," he added. Hearing this, Ronquinhu nodded and replied, "I know that sending a group of engineers is far from enough. Therefore, besides the group of engineers, we will send our residents to help you build the wall. You only need to provide them with a basic salary and temporary residence." After coming to Linen Base, he already asked around and knew that the basic salary for the workers building the wall was more than the income the Yunshan City Base's residents could earn in 3 days. By sending them over to help build the wall, It could ease the burden of Yunchen Base for at least several years, as they didn't have to provide food for them as long as they stayed at Linen Base. After they finished their work here, they could share their knowledge about how the Linen Base operated and managed the residents. This way they could learn from them. If this deal was done, the Yunchen Base would benefit a lot. Even though Zun Qi was not an expert on managing the base, nor an expert on negotiation, Wen Hanli had lots of experience regarding the bureaucracy. While he was an active soldier, he came in contact with politicians more often than his captain did. Therefore, he knew that this deal looked like a lost deal for the Yunchen Base, while in fact, they wanted the Linen Base to take care of their residents and solve their food shortage problem. They were basically asking for help, but still acting as if they were lending a helping hand, wanting the Linen Base to owe them a favor. Coming to this conclusion, he said, "Comrade Rong, if you want to include workers in the deal, shouldn't your base handle their salaries? Asking Linen to pay is essentially asking us to hire them. From that perspective, your base benefits by shifting the food crisis burden onto us," he added. Hearing his words, Rong Kinyu remained composed and replied, "Well, if we put it that way, what you said makes sense." After a moment of pause, he continued, "But I heard the second rain is less than 2 months away. Judging by your urgency in construction, I assume it's not just ordinary rainfall. While your base did help us lighten our burden by hiring our residents, isn't your base also benefiting from it? With more workers, you can finish your base wall project faster." Wen Hanli nodded and replied, "That's indeed the case, but having more ordinary workers only made a slight change to the progress." After saying that, he smiled and added, "If your base is really sincere about closing this deal, then we want at least a total of 500 metal-type and earth-type ability users, outside the ordinary workers." As soon as Wen Hanli said those words, Rong Kinyu narrowed his eyes. The Yunchen City base only has a total of 3,000 ability users, with only 987 elemental-type ability users. By sending a total of 500 metal and earth-type ability users, the progress of their base building would be cut down by more than 40%. It would lengthen the time needed to build their wall. He considered the pros and cons for a long time before he said, "We can send over metal and earth-type ability users, but it's impossible to send 500 people over. At most, we can only send a total of 200 people." When they heard this, everyone turned to Zun Qi and Wen Hanli. The two of them exchanged glances for a moment before Wen Hanli said, "We will accept 200 ability users, but we can't sell our water. At this moment, the high-level water-type ability users are not in the base, so our daily water supply is only enough for our own consumption." Rong Kinyu already predicted this outcome, so he had no objection and said, "Okay, if there is nothing else, we can start drafting the contract and finalize the deal." Zun Qi nodded and said, "We will prepare the contract and inform you tomorrow." Taking the hint, Rong Kinyu stood up and extended his hand. "Commander Zun, I wish us a successful partnership." Standing up, Zun Qi nodded, shook his hand and replied, "Likewise." After he left the meeting room, Zun Qi turned to his team and said, "Draft the contract and send a team to investigate the situation of Yunchen City." Receiving the order, the soldiers nodded and replied in unison, "Understood." At the same time in the capital, the sound of zombies roaring echoed throughout the city. At this moment, almost all places were filled with zombies roaming around, and there was no sign of humans at all. With the sun rising higher and higher, the zombies' movements became more sluggish and stiff. Under the scorching heat, a metal door hidden in the ground was opened, and several cars drove out of the underground. Sitting inside the cars, one of the soldiers looked out the window and said, "Damn, the city really turned into a dead city." Hearing this, a woman sitting in the passenger seat said, "This time we come out, we have to bring back some supplies. Otherwise, we can only starve to death." "Vice Captain, were you able to contact other teams?" the soldier asked. Shaking her head, the woman replied, "After we relocated to the underground shelter, we lost all contact with the rest of our people. We have sent radio messages to everyone. Right now, we can only hope that other survivors receive our message and come to find us." After hearing her words, one of them said, "It would be great if the Phantom team was around. Unfortunately, they were on a mission when the apocalypse arrived." As soon as he said this, the woman said, "We don't know about their situation. Right now, it is best not to pin our hopes on other people and focus on solving the urgent matter by ourselves." Hearing her words, the soldiers nodded and replied in unison, "Understood." Not long after they left the base, the group parked their cars at the roadside and came out holding their weapons. Due to the large number of zombies in the area, they didn't use their guns. Instead, they used their daggers, fire axes, and even blades. The moment they came out of their cars, the nearby zombies were attracted by their scent and rushed over.
It's raw.
The zombies roared as they reached out their claws, aiming at the soldiers' heads. Seeing the incoming attack, the woman said, "Be careful."
Crack duog.
As the zombies got closer, the soldiers swung their weapons, aiming at the zombies' heads. The next moment, black blood and rotten blood splashed everywhere. The team members were ability users and had undergone rigorous training for years in the military. So even when they faced a group of zombies rushing towards them from everywhere, they stayed calm and fought with great teamwork. While they were fighting the zombies, the survivors hiding in the underground military base were lining up to get their meal. Due to the limited supplies, every day they only received 2 meals, once at noon and once in the evening. Before, they were still able to receive a bowl of thin porridge and a piece of steamed bun, but now they were only able to get a bowl of thin porridge. At this moment, a group of people were lining up while holding their bowls. Unlike others, this group consisted of elderly and teenagers. When it was finally their turn, the staff who distributed the thin porridge looked at them with a hint of disdain in his eyes. He scooped half of a ladle of porridge for them and waved them away. Seeing that they received only half of what others received, a teenage girl asked, "Comrade, why did we get less? Everyone gets a bowl, we only have half a bowl." The staff didn't even glance at her when he said, "A useless burden still wants to ask for more food. It's already the commander's generosity that you are able to have that half a bowl of porridge. If you continue making scenes here, don't blame me for informing the guards to take you to the dark room." The moment he said this, an old woman pulled at the teenage girl's arm and called her, "Ayue." Hearing her grandmother's words, she turned and saw her shaking her head. Suppressing the anger in her heart, the teenage girl gritted her teeth and walked to the side. The staff let out a snort and continued giving half portions of the food to the group. After they were given the food, they quickly gulped down the thin porridge before they returned to their room. While it was called a room, it was actually more like a bunker with only 4 walls and nothing else inside. Due to the limited space, one room was shared by 50 people.
Hello.